Okay, guys, so we just went over the American Revolution, and we talked about how the French came in after the Battle of Saratoga to help the Americans. And a lot of it was for revenge, to get back at the British for the French and Indian War, the 7 Years' War. But that interaction in the American Revolution is really going to have an impact in France, and they're going to have their own revolution. And so you really have to understand the three estates. And I know y'all have read Les Mis. And we know that there's three estates. The first is the clergy. They're like 1% of the population. And they get a lot of land for the very small. And they're taxed for the least. The nobility, again, this is another small portion. They're own about 25% of the land. And they're taxed very little. However, the commoners, who make up everybody else, and we saw that on our study guide. It makes a good lot of people. They have a lot more land, but they're taxed the most. And it's this arcane regiment that is going to lead to the French Revolution, because the commoners, they don't like when the general estate is called together and that 97% of the population has one vote, while the clergy gets one vote and the nobility get one vote. And they're going to be really upset about this, along with the favoring of the clergy and the nobility paying less taxes while the commoners pay more taxes. And so it's all of these things together that we've seen being upset about an oppressive government, a government not being equal, the taxation and lack of representation that we saw in the American Revolution are going to be the same overtones that we have in the French Revolution. Another problem that we saw in the American Revolution was that idea that the government had spent too much money and they needed a tax. The same thing happens in the French Revolution. They've been fighting wars and the government has spent too much money and it needs to be able to supplement its affairs, and they need to bring back money into its treasury. And so they're going to start to tax. And many people look at the king saying, whoa, he lives in a nice place. Like, why does he have to look at us for the taxation? Why doesn't he look at the nobility? So he will call for the Estates General to meet. And Louis XVI is going to say, okay, we need to raise revenue, but he's going to say we need to reduce spending. And he's going to propose a tax on the first and second estates, who are only paying 1%. And they've also been exempt from it, so they weren't getting much there. And they're going to get upset, and they're going to push back. And what will happen is the third estate, the first and second estate both have one vote, each estate. So that's 2 votes, and very small people. The third estate gets 1 vote, and they're going to say, wow, that's not equal. That's not fair to us. We should have more of a vote. And we're going to see they're going to withdraw from the Estates General and create their own National Assembly, basing that people get vote per estate should be based on membership. So the third estate should get more. And they come to, they're in Versailles at this time, they come to the tennis court and they said that they're gonna revolt and they will not unequivocate, and they will basically create a new government. Until then, they will not separate. And they're inspired by the ideas of John Locke and popular sovereignty, that the people have a voice. Sorry, guys, that popular sovereignty does not look. Y'all can see. There we go. That looks a little bit better. So when they realize that they're going to create a new government, they realize they need to be armed as well. And so this is when they storm the Bastille. The Bastille is a jail and an armory, just like the American colonists did at Lexington and Concord. They realized they didn't have ammunitions. And so they will storm the Bastille. And eventually, July 14th is Bastille Day in France, and they still celebrate this. And we're going to see the commander of the Bastille, guards are killed, and the king is forced to acknowledge the National Assembly. And so we see that the new government is formed. July 14th is Independence Day, so it's like 10 days after July 4th for us. They abolished feudalism, the idea that the nobles give the land to let the land to the serfs, and the serfs have to give the food to the nobles. They get rid of that. We're going to see they abolish special privilege to the Catholic Church. They adopt a Declaration of Rights of Man that sounds like basic human rights in the what we've seen in the English Bill of Rights and the Bill of Rights. We're going to see this Declaration of Man is going to say all men are born free and equal, and this is going to inspire the Haitian Revolution. They come back with natural rights, which we saw with John Locke: life, liberty, property, security, and resistance to the oppression. And they say every Frenchman has the right to hold public office. And we're going to see they limit the power of the monarchy. This is kind of like what we'll see in the Glorious Revolution. So the king and the nobility refuse to accept this because they're losing it. And what will occur because of their resistance, a radical group named the Jacobians, led by Robespierre, will rise up saying, look, no, we want the people to have rights. We want the people to have rights. That's where popular sovereignty says they are. And so this is going to go into a reign of terror where the Jacobians basically get nobility, and they we're going to see the guillotine come in. We're going to see people drawn and quartered. Oh, so here's Maximilien Robespierre. He's going to be in charge of the Committee of Public Safety, and he's going to persecute the opposition, the nobility. He's going to use the guillotine, and we're going to see the queen and the king are actually executed at this time. And we will have mass military conscription. And we will see Robespierre, amidst this reign of terror, will also succumb to being killed and executed as well. So the Directory is formed at this time to preserve the rights of the people, and they're going to do a lot of things. They're going to abolish slavery. And so this is why the Haitian Revolution will have its foundation. They believe that education should be given to all. They're going to prohibit a primogeniture. Primogeniture meaning one, genitor, a son, that the first son inherits everything. It used to be in most European countries that the firstborn son inherited everything, so the second, third, fourth, fifth, so on and so forth, son didn't get to inherit much and had to look elsewhere. And prohibiting primogeniture allows for those second and third and fourth born sons to rise up into the nobility. And we see nationalism commences. So amidst all this terror, Napoleon is going to take control of France through a coup. And we see that he's saying, look, I'm going to give people rights. We will still have all this stuff. Eventually, when he's taken power on his own, and then he's become absolute, he will call himself Council for Life, where he's saying, I'm still giving Parliament and their group authority. And eventually, when he's welded his own power, he becomes emperor. We're going to see in the Concordat, he's going to have peace with the church. And we're going to see that he is going to take over the lands, and he will pay the clerics. We're going to see he evens out the tax burden, and he's going to create a code of law where all citizens are equal. There's going to be trial by jury, freedom of religion. There's going to be public schools for all. We see that he establishes all this stuff, and this is what allows for him to come in and eventually take over. He established expeditions to Egypt for archaeology. We see that he creates a French legion to promote military, and basically this legion is to educate military. And these military are going to be loyal to him, and they only move up because of merit and not nobility. Eventually, Napoleon will try to take over the peninsula of the Iberian Peninsula, and he'll invade Portugal, and this will cause King João to leave and go to Brazil. And we see he eventually will try to take more of Europe in his campaign. And when his campaign will eventually take him to Russia, and he fails in Russia. No one could get in. He comes in the winter, and basically he does not gain control, and this will retract his empire. And we see he tries to go into Italy. He tries to go into the rest of Europe, and he fails. And the Battle of Waterloo is where he's defeated at in Belgium. And he will be banished, and then he will eventually die. But basically, what happened is they had a monarch. They created a government where the people rule. They created the directory, and then they had reign of terror, and then they go back to a king being established who goes crazy with power. Eventually, France went full circle. They went from monarchy, where they tried to and then the monarchy was too much in power, and the common men revolted. They created their own government, and then Napoleon has a coup, comes in, establishes power, and then goes back to being an emperor. And so there will be reforms that will come out of this, even though we go from king to king, right? Women will march on Versailles, and what will happen is that they're upset about what is going on. There's no food, and they will be shouting bread, and they will be met with the king, and then he will meet their demands. The National Assembly is created. It has a constitutional monarchy, which limits the monarch, and it basically allows men of property to have the right to vote in elections to choose their legislators. So again, a government created where people have representation. And many of the common men start to get upset with Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette for their massive lifestyle, and they will escape to France but be executed. They will try to escape but be executed. So we talked about the convention. This convention is a revolutionary convention of leaders who are trying to get ideas of popular sovereignty. They want a universal manhood suffrage, which means all men could vote. They want to abolish the monarchy. And the problem is that there's going to be so many revolutionary ideas that they're not able to agree to stuff, and the guillotine is used because we see this radical Jacobean group come in. Louis XVI, we saw him executed by Max Robespierre, and Marie Antoinette was also executed because they had a lavish lifestyle while the common men were paying for this, and so the people revolted. So Napoleon's empire, we're going to see he will eventually cause France to go to its great extent, eventually gets to Russia, and he conquers the Iberian Peninsula, the Netherlands, Austria, Prussia, and this is what will lead to the Europeans, Russia, England, all uniting to fight Napoleon, and this is going to be the 7 Years' War, which will lead to debt to all those nations. Okay, I know we set this up, but this is going to be the setup for the Haitian Revolution, which we'll talk about next week.